Just a Job is the podcast for the modern woman to redefine what success looks like. We highlight real women and their real stories.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Just a Job. It's Sarah and Ellen here, your favorite Monday girls to listen to. Before we jump into Megan's episode today, Ellen, let's run through some stand-up. I saw that you had some items added to the agenda.
That is right. I did. Like any good project manager, I went into my agenda and updated it before the meeting. But now that I say that, I'm like, oh, I need to remember what said agenda is. First, okay, I saw this article be posted on LinkedIn of all places, and I took a screenshot of it, so now I have to go find it. But PwC, which is like one of the big four consulting firms, they announced that, I'm going to read exactly this quote, that its UK workers will be required to be in office or with a client minimum of 3 days a week, and they will be tracked on their laptops to enforce their policy.
Security.
Could you imagine your work tracking your exact location to make sure that you were where you said you were going to be? Talk about micromanagers.
Absolutely. My parents don't even have my tracking location. I take that back. My mom does, but
isn't that nuts?
Oh my gosh. Maybe I had this in my head that like only micromanagers existed in the United States. Like it wasn't.
It is a very
national
American coded thing,
right?
know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's only a matter of time before it hits the US. And in fact, it's probably only a matter of time before it hits other companies. But God, it's like screams, I don't trust you.
Well, and then like in the article, it talked about coffee badging like we've talked about before. And I'm like, this is so dumb. If you can get your work done, it should not matter where you are. That way of thinking, I'm like, I know this makes me so mad, Sarah. I know that it was like a board, especially with PwC or like any sort of consulting firm. It was a board of old, white, wrinkly billionaires that were like, you know what we can do? We're going to track everyone. Suckers. Good luck coming into the office. I know 100% that's what it was. And you know what the reasoning was? Because they want to.
Because they can.
No, because they can. It makes me so mad. I mean, like that makes me so angry.
She's fuming, people.
I am. I'm starting to get sweaty.
My other thought too is like, hey, in totality, how much did this cost? Between IT hours to get everything uploaded onto the computer, for IT people to manage it. Who the hell is even tracking it? Like,
so dumb.
Waste of time.
Use your brain power and your dollars for something else that is more productive than tracking exactly where your employees are located.
That to me is the perfect example of like not getting to the root of a problem, but putting some sort of band-aid solution on. If you're having trouble getting people into the office or being with clients, like you think that just putting handcuffs on them is going to make them want to do it?
No. Look inward. That's what I have to say to that. Oh, okay. That makes me so mad. So I saw that and it was an immediate screenshot, and I was like, I have to talk to the podcast about this. My next one was, okay, I was listening to The Toast this past week, and I was listening to it recently, and they were talking about, because we had Labor Day recently, the difference between a 4-day work week and a 5-day work week, and how we even were talking about this too, of how like a 4-day work week is like jam packed. Your days are long, you get a lot of stuff done, but they're so busy. But then you have the 3-day weekend, and like that is such a nice reward at the end of a busy couple of days. And I was laughing so hard because they were talking about how like what they preferred, and then neither of them have like really worked corporate jobs before.
Sorry, I was gonna ask that. I was like, so people who've never had a full-time 5-day a week job are the ones giving commentary on this, anyways.
Well, and the funny thing is, they were saying how like if there was to be a 4-day work week implemented like in corporate America, what would that look like? And they were giving examples as to like, what could you qualify to get the 4-day work week? Like, would it be that you have the most seniority? Like you've been with the company for a certain amount of time, you turn a certain age and you get to work a 4-day work week, like, or it's negotiated in part of your salary. And I thought that, and then I started thinking, I was like, you know, if that was like something I could negotiate in like a a contract, like maybe I would get paid a little bit less, but I would get a 4-day work week. I think I would do it hands down. And I'm curious, one, would you do it? And two, if you were allowed a 4-day work week, like what would you sacrifice?
See, my initial thought is it feels like it needs to be everybody or nobody, because if I was working a 4-day work week, but everybody else was working 5, and there was an expectation that I was like, I think that the environment either needs to be everybody's on or it's async. Because if it's async, it's successful, but like if somebody needs something from you and you're not on, but you've agreed to a 4-day work week, like unfortunately it will look bad on you.
Okay,
if you
that's
can't.
not fun, Sarah. You're not playing the game like I want
I
you to play the
know.
game.
Oh my god, I would do anything to have a 4-day work week, but the
You're being too
reality.
realistic.
I know. I'm sorry, we're not playing hypotheticals here. Like, we're being real. But no, I would give up. I don't think I would give up a fifth of my paycheck. Like that's not how I would see it, because the 4-day work week, like I was busting my balls, like
Yeah.
people are trying to get things done in a 5-day work week. I don't know. Sorry, I'm not being very fun right now, but listen to
Boo.
me out.
You're too realistic. I'd be like, I think it would be funny if it was an age thing, like once you turned 30 or something, then all the younger kids would be like, losers, you have to work 5 days and I get to work 4. Just more of a like rub it in your face thing, but that's about me and my attitude.
And then every
so
10 years you drop a day off or yeah. So like
Ooh.
once you
Thank you.
like,
You're playing the game now. I appreciate it. Okay. Those are all of my stories and fun updates. Oh, okay. I have brown hair. Sarah has a bob and I have brown hair. What is happening? We're having midlife crises.
I should have showed up with blonde hair today to really just
we should have gotten you a wig. That would have been funny.
I know.
Okay,
but yes,
sorry.
Ellen, your hair is adorable. I didn't want to make a comment about it because I saw your TikTok, but anyways.
I just had a really sour attitude. 1, and then 2, very sour attitude with work. So I was like, come for me, I dare you. No, that was the kind of like level I was at, Okay, I'll stop talking now. Sarah, please give us your updates.
My only thing, so I think we've talked about this before, but you know the word grit? It's not in my dictionary. I just do not have grit.
Okay.
Or endurance or really like sometimes I just hit my threshold, and it's something that I'm working on. And I remember reading in a book, and I know that she got canceled, but it was Rachel. It was like, girl, wash your face. Do you remember that book? That was like the definition.
Yes.
There was one really big takeaway that I remember from the book, and it was if you like physically do things that challenge yourself when you show up to like in the workplace, you will find that challenging yourself will come easier. And I feel like the example was like, oh, if you're doing 10 push-ups, do one more to prove to yourself that like you can do 11 push-ups. And then when it shows up in the workplace, like you've proven to yourself that you have this, like capacity to do hard things. Mm-hmm. And so yesterday I'm at Run Club and there's this giant hill that literally feels like a half mile long. And I'm running up it. Well, practically Briggs is like pulling me up it because at this point it's the end of the run. And all I kept saying was like, Sarah, get your shit together and show some grit. And I was like, I'm running up this hill and I was like, I can do hard things. I can do hard things. And I was literally like, I feel like such a psycho right now. Like if people were in my head. But anyways, and then I did it and I got to the top of the hill. And then my literal first thought was like, see? I don't have to take a lunch break. I can do hard things. And then I was like, that's so twisted. So anyways, run club, endurance, grit. It's something that I'm working on.
My cheeks are from smiling. This is hysterical. I can picture you running up. I can picture Briggs pulling you up the hill also.
It wasn't pretty.
And being like, in your mind, I can do it. Come on, Sarah. You can do hard things. You are capable of greatness. And you're swinging your arms and you get to the top. And then you decide that you don't need to take a lunch break. That is hilarious. Oh my God. That is so funny. I'm proud of you for going to Run Club. I'm proud of you for running up the hill and making it. That is honestly You should celebrate that.
I'm trying over here. So if anyone has, and I know that there's literally a book called Grit. If anybody has any moments of grittiness, I'd love to hear it, because it's important to learn from each other. But anyways,
Amen.
we're gonna head into Meagan's episode. Speaking of learning from one another, she provides such great insight into her career, all of the journey, the little moves, the big moves, everything in between. So we're excited to share her career journey with you. But before we jump into that, Ellen, any parting thoughts?
I love this new theme with Ellen. Any parting thoughts? I just want to like +1 that little bit that we're doing. My parting thought is Meagan talks about in her interview the importance of mentorships and her having the desire to pay it forward. So if this resonates with you, shoot her a message on LinkedIn or something and tell her your favorite part or ask her a question or something. I think that would be a really cool way to like round out the episode. 1, you get to connect with someone new and fabulous. And 2, she gets to pay it forward, which she is hoping to do. So that's my parting thought.
I love that. Thanks for sharing. Everybody, enjoy your Monday, and we'll see you in the episode. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Just a Job. Today, we have Meagan Morris, a dear friend and colleague of mine. She is an expert content and SEO strategist known for her ability to help companies sprint up the Google search rankings to increase brand awareness and revenue. Her journey with SEO began in journalism, and she's written for publications like The Atlantic, Cosmopolitan. Ooh, I have so many questions. Women's Health, Self, and Yahoo. Oh my God, almost put Yoo-hoo. Okay, apparently I want chocolate milk. Anyways, she's led impactful SEO and content strategies for companies such as the cannabis telehealth provider LeafWell and the financial services firm Credible. Thanks for joining us, Meagan.
Thanks for having me. It's so great to be on with you. You both have done a wonderful job with the podcast, so I'm so excited to be here.
Yay, I am thrilled. So Meagan and I, for background, have known each other for over 4 years. We started working together at a company based in Omaha, and it was initially remote, and then we got to go in person. And then Meagan pulled me from that company to go work with her. So we have basically been coworkers for almost 3 of those 4 years. So it's been a wild journey, especially in our last company. She was always my voice of reason, my listening ear for everything. And especially when it came to the podcast, because of her background in everything marketing, SEO, I was like, if anybody knows anything about podcasting, it's definitely Meagan. So full circle moment for us here. And I'm so excited to jump into it. But Meagan, first question for you. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
So I had quite the imagination as a child. My mom would probably say that I had a problem with the truth at times, and that's going to make me sound terrible, but I just had a lot of imagination. So I wanted to be a singer for the longest time and an actress, and I would tell like and that was kind of all throughout my childhood. And I would tell stories. I remember in elementary school of like that I was like going to Hollywood on the weekends. Like that was the most of my like, lying. But it was, making myself to sound like I was on my way to be a star. So when I was little like that, that's what I wanted to be throughout then. And then as I was going through, like teenage years and those tumultuous times and into high school, I didn't really have a particular, I think I still had in the back of my mind those dreams of becoming like a famous singer or something. But, in reality, I didn't have necessarily a thought out path. I thought maybe I would want to go into something in the medical field, but I wasn't really sure because I knew science and math were not my best subjects in the world. So when I went to college, I was kind of undecided on what path to take.
I'm laughing at the singer thing because I remember like my own personal experience. Like I wanted to be a singer every year for Halloween with like the little microphone, and be like a little pop star. Like totally relate to that. I also love the like honesty of going through high school and being like, what the heck do I want to do? Like, you know what's in front of you and you don't really know what your path is going to be. So also relatable. Going into college did you go in undecided and then make a decision into a major? How did that decision come about?
Yeah, so I think my freshman year, my first semester at least, I was undecided and still kind of exploring the maybe medical field track, but biology 101 definitely cured me of that. I just knew that while I was interested in the subject, maybe I wasn't interested in enough, and it just didn't interest me enough to think that this is the path I want to take, but I'm thinking about what do I like to do? And so when I was younger, my dad was a DJ or news director at a local radio station. And so I remember for a few years when I was young going there quite a bit, and I was interested in that. So I declared a journalism major, I think my second semester for broadcasting, to kind of maybe go down that route. And then alongside that, I was interested in the travel aspect and, being like a jet setting sort of like very cosmopolitan person. And so international business at the business college really spoke to me because one of the requirements was to study abroad. So I decided to double major. And so I think that was the second semester of my freshman year when I declared both majors. But it did really encompass all of my different interest areas at the time. And I think it was the right choice.
Ooh, I know where this is heading. I forgot about the part of your story about broadcasting and journalism, but I know where this is going. Okay, so amazing that you opened up your eyes and opportunity. I think that's an important thing for a lot of, if we have any listeners that are in college, to definitely take that first year. If you don't know what you're doing, wonderful. Try all the classes, do all the things, and remember that you're 18 and you're not supposed to have it figured out. And also too, along the road, people change their mind and you can do whatever you want. But throughout college,
did you say either? Sorry to interrupt, but my parents say either. I think your parents, a lot of parents want, and mine included, kind of wanted me to be on a path. And I think it's worse you can always change your mind, right? I think until you get to when you're at that point where you're getting close to graduation, then it's a little more difficult. It's still possible, right? But at the same time, the earlier on you kind of do that exploration, I think the better.
Absolutely.
Okay, Sarah, before you ask your next question, my washer is going. Can you hear it in the background? It's loud to me. And okay, fabulous. If you hear it, just let me know and I'll close my door.
Okay, no worries. So then, Meagan, throughout college, did you have any internships that either cemented this is what I want to do, or were okay, this is not it?
So I did an internship at Walt Disney World. The first semester, technically my sophomore year. I think that was a really formative, or what's the word I want to say? That was really formative, I think is the word I want to say for me, because I met people from all over the world. I lived with 7 other girls who were wildly different places and different personalities. So that really helped open up my eyes to see how to interact with other people. So that was an internship that I did, and that was a great experience. But the work part of it, that was not really anything about my career. But I think the next part of my internship experience during college was when I interned at a radio station in my college town. And I remember I really wanted to work at a radio station. Like I said, I had that in the back, that background with it with my dad. And I wanted to work at this pop music radio station in our college town. And I had emailed the program director and I said, I want to be an intern. And she wrote me back saying, we don't really have interns right now. Sorry. But I was pretty persistent. It wasn't like I was, emailing her every day, but it was semi-regularly where I was, still interested in doing this. What would it take to be an intern? And eventually, I don't know if I wore her down or if eventually there was a need there. And I went and worked at the radio station for their morning show, and I helped produce it and kind of learned about radio in that way. And then I became a DJ and I was a DJ for about 3 years, started doing overnights, which was interesting, but it was a good learning ground for me. My personality is pretty introverted. I'm not really so much of the typical radio type personality. But I did learn a lot about myself and growing my own confidence. And then ultimately deciding that was not the path I wanted to go down, but it made a ton of great friends doing it. And I really learned a lot about persistence in getting what I want, within reason, of course, but also, learning and taking advantage of opportunities, and then saying it's okay if you don't want to go down this specific route. But it did teach me a lot.
Oh my gosh. Did you have a stage name, Meagan?
No, it was just Meagan. They always wanted me to use my last name too, but something about that seemed weird because literally almost everybody had a radio name, but I was just Meagan. And it was
just Meagan.
Just Meagan. They're like, oh, it sounds so cool, Meagan Morris. And I'm like, no, the alliteration. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. So it was fun. I worked on the morning show, learned a lot about that. Did overnights, which is interesting. You get to learn a lot about the radio business. And one of my former bosses from there, he works for Sirius he's worked there forever after he left that station. And so it's kind of fun to listen to him. He does the morning show on Hits One. So it's kind of cool to see where some of the people I worked with ended up.
I love like so far listening to your story of like you're going and trying different things, and while maybe they don't necessarily relate to what your full-time career is now, they gave you so like a really good foundation and soft skills to take you into wherever you go in the future. And I think like a lot of people experience that where it's like, okay, I'm doing this job, I don't really know what this means, but I'm learning something. And while it's maybe not like this clear defined path forward for myself, again, I'm learning something and I can take bits and pieces of this experience and bring it to wherever I go in the future. And I really like that as a message because I think so many people can relate to that, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to try as many things as you can. I don't know necessarily that I had that plan in mind. I think it was, I was interested in it. I wanted to do it and be part of it. So I pursued it in that way. But yes, absolutely, looking back, it was so formative. Everything I did was formative for me in a different way. And I think it helps me, like you said, learn the soft skills I needed to eventually it all kind of gelled together to where I am now.
Yeah. Totally. So post internship, what was after that?
So I did that pretty much until I graduated college, and then I decided to move on after that. So, and in there, I worked several jobs. I always, for whatever reason, I didn't necessarily need to, but worked, serving jobs, and I worked at a bank. Learned that I don't want to work in a banking industry for sure after that experience. So that was really interesting. But then after college, I took a position with a very well-known nonprofit. And that was another learning experience for me because I stayed at the position for about 6 months because it was very clear early on that I think just had mismatched expectations about what I should be doing and how much I should know as somebody who was just graduating college and had literally no clue how to be a full-time person and how to work as a full-time employee. And I was trying to learn and they wanted results. And so it didn't meld with where I was at and what they wanted. So I decided to move on from that after about 6 months.
Ooh, I love that because I think so often, and in my own experience, you get into your first job and there's so much that you're trying to transition into in your personal life, but also in your professional life. And it's pretty instant that like, oh God, what have I done feeling? Yep. And you're like, okay, I recognize that I'm in this uncomfortable state of life. If I give it this chance, go on. I feel like 6 months is plenty of time for you to make your own opinion about if the role is right for you. But on one side, you're battling the like, I just went through 4 years of college for this. And then you have like another person over here. And there was just like a lot coming at you. At what point did you go like, okay, this is it? And what was that transition out of that job and into your next job?
So do you mean as far as when I decided to move out of that or just so I think it was a meeting I had with my boss at the time where he was very curt with me about some expectations that I wasn't meeting. And, honestly, you do need that feedback. I think I was pretty used to getting really good feedback. And so that kind of surprised me. But at the same time, I realized not that I just wanted to quit, but also that it was just what he wanted from me. Which was, I guess, more or less like outside sales, like making phone calls to try and sell the service that we were providing, was not in the original plan of the job. And it made me feel like this is not going to be a good fit. And eventually he's going to be upset with my performance and I'm not going to be happy with the job. And it really did make me feel, I guess, I wouldn't say, it was very disappointing in a lot of ways. I felt like that somewhere I was lacking and it was something that I needed to do, but eventually it just became that it was not. I think they could tell that I was not happy with it. And it was kind of a conversation of, do you want to continue with this or do you want to move on? And I just remember feeling really relieved, like I almost had permission to say that I wanted to move on. And that's when I figured that was the best step. What I was worried about was the whole idea of back when I graduated college, it was, you can't have any gaps in your employment. You need to stay at everything for a year. And so I was worried about that. Am I shooting myself in the foot because I did leave, before a year mark? And am I going to look like a job hopper? But that never actually ended up being a problem at all. So that was my main worry. And I had made some friends at that job that I really enjoyed speaking with, or, like having lunch and things with, that I was disappointed. But I just remember the relief I felt when I gave myself permission to say, like, no, this is not what I need, what I want to be doing.
And I feel like it's like either someone tells you it or you just kind of sit and reflect. And once you finally come to that place of this is not serving me and I need to make a change, it is, like you said, such a relief. And sometimes it just is that thought process to get to that point. And it's like literally a sigh and you feel like this burden being lifted from you. I'm like, I know that from personal experience, so I can totally relate to that too.
Not the last time I've had that experience, but I'm reading this book. It's called "Do Hard Things," I believe, and it's talking about mental toughness. And one of the takeaways I've had from it is that we're very much, and I think as people, as to never quit. That hustle culture where it's never quit, always push forward, and do whatever it takes and do the hard work. And sometimes mental toughness is having the choice to say, this is not serving me the best, and I can step away from it instead of making myself unhappy for a long term to prove what, right? So it's like, it's not necessarily that I'm not trying to prove myself. It's on my own happiness at the end of the day. And I think making that realization, sometimes people associate it with failure, but a lot of times it can be really show your mental strength by saying, this is not the right choice for me and I need to find something that is, and it'll be the best choice for everyone.
100%.
Absolutely. So Meagan, I know we'll eventually get there, but I know that in your life you also had a physical change and you moved to New York. Where does that fit into the timeline? And I guess just kind of take us through that like early career transition. You just left that job and you're on to something bigger and better.
So after that job, I did have another position at a self-publishing company, and I was there for a little over a year. And that was really took me down the marketing path. And that was something I was interested in anyway. But it also around the same time required me to do a lot more writing. And I really discovered an aptitude for that part of it. And I really enjoyed that. So I started doing freelance writing on the side, working with various different publications, like for companies, I should say, not publications, but I wanted to write for publications and I wasn't quite able to bridge that gap. So my solution was, I'm going to go to the media capital of the world and go to graduate school and learn how to do that. And that's when I moved to graduate school or moved to New York. After that, I would say that was 2009. So long time ago, but it was a good choice for a lot of different reasons.
Oh, it's like every girl's dream, like chasing their dreams, wanting to pursue their career, packing everything up and moving to New York City. Not every girl's dream, but I can definitely relate to that. Oh, yeah. What was that like being young? Did you have friends there? Did you know anyone when you moved? Like, what was that like picking your life up and moving?
So that was, the funny thing is when I made that choice, I had never been to New York City before. And so
that's awesome.
So it was, I wouldn't say, definitely don't regret making the choice that I did. I think it was the right one at the time. I did have friends there. A friend that I had worked with in Lincoln, in my college town, she had moved there to be with her boyfriend. Eventually, they got married, but she had moved there. So I knew I had her. She was a close friend. And then my former boss from the radio station, he was also in the city. And so I had, a built-in support network somewhat in there. So that was really essential for me to know that I had people to lean on. And so that helped solidify the decision that, yes, this would make sense for me. But as over time, I definitely made a lot of friends there through my different graduate school classes that I was in and just people met along the way. So it turned out to be, I think, more socially beneficial than I had maybe anticipated, that it'd be more about work than the social part of it. Mm-hmm. Definitely had dreams of being very Carrie Bradshaw-esque and, having like the designer clothes and all of that. The reality is a little bit different. It can be very tough to live in the city if you're not, as a student who didn't have a separate job at the time. It could be difficult at times, but again, it led me to achieving what I wanted to achieve.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like New York.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I was going to say, sounds like New York City was definitely the right move for you. I imagine the transition from Nebraska to New York City was a bit startling, but sounds like you made it through and you did the right thing for you in that moment. After graduating from school, what was the next step for you? Did you stay in New York? Did you move?
I stayed for a little while, but I figured it was kind of funny. I was having difficulty finding a position at some of these publications that I wanted to work, and I thought, what is really keeping me here? I missed my family, and so I decided after a little while after graduating, I would say it was probably about 6 or so months, but after a while I thought it's time to move back. So I did move home, and ironically, that's when I started landing a lot of the writing positions and editing positions that I ended up working for, the Cosmos of the world. And my first post-graduation position, I guess it was more freelance than anything, but it was writing for a website called sheknows.com. And that was another, I guess, game in persistence, because I'd emailed the editor-in-chief and they didn't need anybody, but I was more persistent. And eventually, again, if I wore her down or what, but I started writing like trending news stories and quick turnaround stuff. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that was essential for me to hone my skills.
You mentioned Carrie Bradshaw earlier, and I'm like, while you left New York, I'm still sensing like a Carrie Bradshaw theme with the writing and Cosmo and all of that fun stuff. And like, I kind of see that like theme weaving its way through your career journey. So with that first job post grad school, graduation, grad school, you know what I'm trying to say. What was the next step after that first job? Was that just freelancing and you kind of worked for a bunch of different places, publications? Was there a specific place that you worked for? What was that like?
Yeah, so I mostly did freelancing for a few years after that. That's when I guess technically I was full-time at Cosmo, but it wasn't I think it was technically a full-time position, but it was independent. And I was doing the same sort of quick turnaround kind of articles made for the web. I wrote for Yahoo, and then I was pitching articles and working for various publications for a few years after that. I had written an article once for Yahoo that broke some news on Kim Kardashian. And so I was featured on the homepage this article was featured on the homepage of Yahoo in 2 separate places. It went insane. It had like nearly, 8 million views in like 48 hours. And I didn't know it was on there at first, but I started getting a lot of weird emails, like just one after the other. And it was, people giving me death threats and telling me some wild stuff that I'm just like, why would you say these things from your work email address? But that was a very, really interesting experience. So yeah, I got to be part of that. So
that's so cool to have a piece, this sounds strange, a piece of you memorialized on the internet, right? Like you have created something and it lives on the internet, which I mean, that's social media nowadays, but like, especially writing, like it's just a moment in time, especially like Kim Kardashian. I'm sure it was about something wild that she did.
It was about a boycott, and it was literally something I was looking for something to write about, and I had received a press release, and I guess I was the first one to pick it up. So it was just like, it took me 15 minutes to write this article and it went bonkers. So it's just,
you got millions of views. Oh, that's awesome. I'm curious about working for a large publication like Cosmopolitan, because the high schooler in me is screaming that is the magazine that we would buy at $7 a magazine, and
it was glamorous.
Oh my gosh, it was like 13 going on 30, right? Like you wish that you were like 30, flirty, and thriving when you would read those magazines. Was it as glamorous as it was made out to be?
So I had a really interesting experience when I went to the office. The only time I went to the office when I started working for them, and we had like a day-long conference kind of with a bunch of people at the publication, because they were really refocusing on the digital side. And so I remember seeing some of these editors and just thinking that they were so glamorous and feeling like, wow, I'm just, here's my Target outfit, right? And like they're in like designer gear and all this. And Joanna Coles was the editor-in-chief at the time, and I wouldn't say it's like a Anna Wintour. She was never like elite. She was kind of set up to be that, but she was very no nonsense. And I remember her saying in the interview, or in the during one of the breakouts, I guess, in the meeting, she's like, I have a ton of resumes on my desk of people who would love to do this. So basically, you have to want to be here and you prove yourself, more or less. And I was like, oh, okay. So that was kind of a little terrifying, but so that was kind of I guess, my Devil Wears Prada moment, if you would even call it that. But other than that, it was not that glamorous, to be quite honest with you. It was, I was working at home and I was writing, several stories a week about various interesting topics. Very, obviously cosmopolitan, very sex and relationship based. And some of the stuff I'm writing, I'm just thinking back of like, wow, that's wild that I was writing that stuff. And I even have gone back and like, I haven't looked at those articles in years, but recently I redid my website and I was looking through like old clips that I haven't looked at in years. And I'm like, wow, this is some stuff that it's wild. Like nothing was like inappropriate or anything, but it was just little old me. Like it was very, very odd.
Scandalous.
Yeah.
I know. I love that. And I also pictured the Devil Wears Prada moment of like, a million girls would kill for this job, so get it together and, show us what you're made of kind of deal. So did you ever have any imposter syndrome or like questioning whether this was the right fit for you? Like, what was that mindset like when maybe in that particular instance of, I have so many other people knocking on my door. What do you have to offer? And, how does that hold you accountable too?
I think imposter syndrome is something I can still struggle with quite a bit. But yes, to say that is I felt, kind of on edge all the time of thinking, is my stuff good enough? And, I always had good feedback about the quality of my work and part of that, but it does kind of put this weird sort of competition and pressure on you where I'm trying to prove myself with every story or feeling like this could be the last story I wrote. And then you'd have that sort of irrational thought of like, if I don't do well at this, then I'm like, I'll never get another writing position again, or this is kind of the end of my, in the reality, no. But at the same time, I was very hyper aware of my performance and I wanted to make sure that I was doing the best that I possibly could. Eventually it was me that decided to move on from that. So it never came to, my fears never came to pass, but it was always something in the back of my head, just worried that I was not going to measure up. And back to, I guess I didn't always feel like I fit the mold of what I thought a Cosmo writer or somebody that working for their quite was. And so, this is all then stuff going on, all the irrational things that you tell yourself as women. But, the reality is, we're all doing as best a job that we can, and we all have different backgrounds. So to give ourselves a break, I always have to remind myself of that. But to your question, yes, imposter syndrome was rampant during that time.
I can imagine in that setting, especially too, if somebody told me I have so many resumes, like buck up or get out kind of thing, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to put in 60 hours a day. Like, forget 60 hours a week.
And if to think about it, the crazy thing is that I'm making like $20 an hour to do this job. Wow. And so it was, not that well paid. And I still put so much pressure on myself, and I was still writing for other clients at the time. So, hindsight, of course, I think I'd probably still be pretty hard on myself. That's just naturally who I am. But yeah, it was probably a little bit misplaced.
Ooh, that raises such a good point, and something that I've coined it myself because I don't know. I don't know why I hold this establishment in such prestige honor, but I call it the Duke effect, when people like work for a place that carries a name, but they don't actually like the job that they're doing and they don't get paid well. But leaning into the second, the Duke effect is like, oh, well, we don't have to pay you well because you're working at Duke. Yep. Or,
it's absolutely true. I think that entertainment industry is a great example of that, internships and all of that. Those jobs there's a lot of work for not a lot of reward. And I think that is definitely the case in writing as well, where you should feel honored to write for these publications. So because I have 20,000 resumes of people who are dying to work here. So feel honored to get paid this. And that's not to speak, ill of any person in particular, but that is definitely the mindset that a lot of those companies have.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Not us interrupting each other again. But it's like dangling the carrot, like, oh, you want to work for us? You're gonna have to sacrifice something, whether it's pay, a title, your time, whatever. But the benefit is you have that name on your resume, therefore you're set. But again, you have to sacrifice something in having a prestigious name like that on your resume. So definitely understand that as well. Post Cosmo, was there something that came to you? Were you out actively searching for another next step? What did that look like?
So one of the editors I had worked with at one of the publications I worked for had moved on to be in charge of basically a free newspaper that's distributed in New York, Philadelphia, and Boston. And I was freelancing for her for a while, and she had joked about like becoming full-time. And I thought, well, why not? And so she was really excited, and I started working. It's called Metro. And so I worked there for a little over a year as an editor. So I was a senior editor. And then eventually, when she left that position, I moved into what she was doing. But that was not necessarily that I was particularly looking for it, but it was an opportunity to work with her. And it was also kind of a next step because I was feeling very I kind of burnt out from writing so much all the time that it was kind of a welcome break where I was still working in media, but I could kind of take a step back and working with reporters versus having to produce quite so much. And I think that was the first time I had really worked in SEO in some way, in some perspective, where I was kind of dabbling in it in the background of wanting to get my articles read without, sacrificing the actual content. So I kind of backed into it that way, but that was the first time I had started working with it specifically.
And will you, in an elevator pitch, explain SEO?
Oh my gosh. SEO is basically a group of activities that you do to satisfy the Google, mostly any search engine's algorithm, right? But it's the content and the links and all of the activities that you do on a website to help increase your rankings of those pages, because everybody wants to be on the first page of Google, ideally the number one spot. And I'm butchering this explanation of it, but it's the content and getting backlinks and the technical side to satisfy the different aspects of what Google looks at when they are deciding how to rank pages. Google has this very detailed and multifaceted approach to it, and they only let us know certain parts of it. So it's kind of the game of figuring out what does it take to get to the top.
This is like another example of career paths and jobs that I had no idea existed. But then when you sit down and look at it face value, of course it makes sense. And I find this absolutely fascinating because it combines like the creative marketing and writing aspect, but also with that tech aspect and playing the game with Google to try and get at the number one spot. Like, I just find it so fascinating. So in SEO, like, what does a typical day look like for you?
So I take the approach with SEO is that it's always content first. You'll get a billion different perspectives, and it all comes from different, however they came into SEO. But for me, it starts with content. You have to be providing what people are looking for and satisfy the intent of what they're searching for. So it's called like search intent of the keyword. So if I'm searching for instance, because I worked in it for so long, like cannabis or something specifically about the cannabis plant, are they getting the information that they need from the articles? And that all comes down to the content. Of course, there's the technical side and a lot of other parts of it. But if you don't have good content, you're not going to rank because people are going to leave your page immediately and they're going to go somewhere else. And that shows that you're not giving them what you need. So why should you be rewarded with higher rankings? Very simplistic answer, but that's what I always look for is I'm understanding how to create, like how to structure articles. So what I'm doing now is a little bit different than what I have been doing, but a typical day would be creating content briefs for writers to create the articles very prescriptively. It's not necessarily that it's fill in the blank, but it's helping guide them and to make sure that we're covering the topics in the right way. because they might not have that visibility to know that themselves. And then it's working for getting links. So when I say getting links, it's backlinks to your website, where you are basically, backlinks act as little votes. So if I link to your website, I'm saying that this is a good website. It's providing a lot of good information, vice versa if you're linking to my website. So the more backlinks and quality ones that you have, the better the chance that you'll have of ranking. So it's finding opportunities to network with others to create those backlinks, whether that's, asking them directly or looking for different PR opportunities. So there's various ways to go about it. But again, it all comes back to making sure that the content is solid first before anything else, because the rest of it, it's all important, but at the very basics, if you don't have content, you don't have a strategy.
Question that I have, just general to being a content writer, is that, especially in the case of like being a freelance content writer, being a subject matter expert in a lot of things, I imagine, is quite difficult. How do you manage that? Because I know that you've worked for fashion, you've worked for cannabis, you've worked in the, I almost said fitness industry, and the financial industry. How do you contain all the information that it takes to be an expert in all of those industries?
That's where my ADHD comes into a huge benefit, because I love just knowing things, and naturally I just like to know a lot about things, and I'm naturally curious. So I think that's where it comes in. When I went into the cannabis space, I knew about CBD because at our previous company that we had worked for, one of the clients was a CBD brand. So I knew a little bit about it, but not much. And I had to learn quickly. And I think that satisfied my need to know stuff. So I think that's basically the answer. I'm just interested in everything, and I want to know a lot of stuff. But yeah, I think you look at it sometimes and it's pretty crazy where, wow, there's just a lot of stuff that I've known, and it's not necessarily that I'm stuck in the same industry throughout my career. It's been a lot of knowledge. So yeah, apparently there's room up there, for all the lacking of the science and math knowledge, there's a lot of space to keep all that other information.
Oh, that's awesome. As someone who also struggled in math and science, I relate to that very much so, especially I've industry hopped. So I like your perspective, because I think I've had people ask me the same thing. Like, how did you do that? And then two, how do you learn? I mean, I could probably think of some other, diverse examples, but fashion and cannabis in the financial industry. I mean, what's more opposite than those three, right? It's quite the spectrum of knowledge and topics, right? So, I think, are we getting to the point then where you're at Leafwell or leaving Leafwell? I'm trying to be where are we at in your timeline?
Where am I at right now?
Yes.
So I was with Leafwell for a little over 2 years. I left there at the end of last year. And then I moved on to financial, which was Credible. And so that position did not end up being a good fit for me either, which is kind of a full circle moment. So I left that position after a few months so now I'm looking for my next opportunity, doing some freelance work and working on my own projects, but it's an interesting job market right now. So I'm looking for my next opportunity in SEO and content.
Hire Meagan. She's amazing.
Hire me, please, for something that is interesting and I can prove my worth.
Definitely. I think we have had so many conversations around, it's literally just a job, Meagan. Or on the days when I'm crying, you'd be like, it's literally just a job, Sarah. And we were just each other's little coaches. And I think it's interesting, and I would be curious to hear what you think. But from my perspective, you've done so much in your career, and the just expansive knowledge that you have is overwhelming, first off, but also too, you've served in so many different roles. You've served in a freelance role, you served in a full-time role, you served in a leadership role. And the question that I'm getting to is, of all of those, what's been your favorite? Where have you found the most joy?
There's a part of me that really likes leading people. I love, working as a team and working at, collaborating and things, especially in a remote environment. That's very important to me. And I love building those relationships, but I really love doing the work. Like I love, creating the content and creating the strategies and watching them and implementing all of those. So I think that it's maybe not the typical way of looking at it, of wanting to really move up in management and looking to the VPs and presidents of the different companies, but I just love seeing the growth from the actions that I take. So I think that that's where I'm best fit right now, versus being in a leadership position.
I feel that. I feel like we had a lot of conversations about that. Like when you step into a leadership role, you have to let go of the execution seat that you once sat in. And that's always really difficult because I think as somebody who really enjoys the execution, and especially because SEO is so results based, that you get to see, hey, I did this and it led to this. And if I make this edit, it completely changes the SEO game for this company. So I'm personally happy to see that like this is something that you're coming into where you're like, okay, this is where I feel most empowered and also to like just the most joy on the day to day.
Because it is one of those things where you have to trust your team, and it's never that I didn't think that they were, everybody is capable of doing it. So it wasn't definitely was not a micromanagement perspective, but it was kind of like missing that part of it and not just wanting to do the management type stuff. And so looking for those opportunities. And I do recognize that was one of the definite, growth areas I needed to work on, was taking myself out of that always and not trying to create that work on top of what my team was doing.
Looking back on your career, what is the best piece of advice that you've received?
That I've received? I think I don't know that there's one piece of advice that I've received from one person. Looking back, I think I could have done really well to have a mentor, like a female leader that and I have had some in various capacities, but not through work. I would have served well to have somebody who could give me that advice and say like, hey, this is where where your development opportunities are, and this is where you should go. I kind of felt like maybe that would have helped my path a little bit had I really, and that's solidly on me. It's not that, somebody else should have stepped up to the plate. I should have maybe recognized and looked for that. So I've more recently thought about that and how I can help others. And there's a book that I read recently that was Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. And I'd love to be able to provide that for other women and kind of help shorten their path and help make things more clear than they were for me.
I want a copy of this book.
I know, right?
It sounds really kind of kitschy but it has a lot of good advice and things that we don't even realize that we're doing as women, that you have to kind of step back and think. It's not like being like a man. It's how do you lead like who you are, but not let that, how we were, I guess, raised, or how women tend to be classified. I'm not trying to get into a men versus women debate, but it's really eye-opening to think about how we approach things naturally very differently than a lot of men do, and how that can hold us back.
Oh, and I'm adding that to my
I was going to say,
list.
Yeah, we'll have to do like a book club of that book, and then do an episode where we review it and share our thoughts in real time.
She has different ones in that series as well, and I haven't gotten through all of them, but it was very eye-opening for me of like, yep, I do that. Yep, that was something that I don't realize that I do, and it's held me back. So I think the younger that people can read that and really internalize it to whatever it speaks to them, can be very helpful.
Sure.
Very cool.
Well, Meagan, I'm going to hit you with the big question. How do you define success for yourself?
Wow. I would say that if I feel like I think it's really simple to call it like if I feel happy, right? I think happiness is a lot of things, but if I feel personally fulfilled by what I'm doing and also feel fairly compensated for what I'm doing, that's how I measure success in a lot of ways. But ultimately, going back to it, every job is just a job. And so you have your profession, but not taking that identity of success from one job, but holistically saying what I've accomplished in my life am I happy with it? And do I have the support of family, friends, or that good support network? And do I feel like financially I've been able to achieve those goals? I would think all of that together is how I would define success, if that actually is an answer.
Absolutely.
It's an answer.
whole person, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, let's head into some rapid fire questions. Ellen, kick it off.
All right. Megan, one thing you cannot live without during the workday.
Ooh, I would say probably my liquid IV drink.
What flavor?
I think. Oh gosh, I think there's like a fruit punch. I have to look at them. Honestly, I just kind of like dump them in there. There's like a raspberry lemonade one. But that's been essential for me because I tend to get really focused on things and don't drink enough. And then that's helped me not get dehydrated. So I would say that's essential.
That's important. The like 2 or 3 p.m. brain slump where it's like, oh, I'm dehydrated. Yeah, That's it. Meagan, I had to think about that. Least favorite corporate oh my God. Least favorite corporate catchphrase.
Oh my gosh. There's a lot of them. But I would say like, it's all about the team and we're a family. I think that's one that is honestly used by some of the most toxic people I've ever met.
So true. Like
so true.
Facts.
Yes.
Facts. Yeah. What is the best benefit that you've ever gotten from a job?
Ooh, is that terrible that I don't necessarily think I've had one?
No.
I've never had anything honestly really out of the norm, except maybe like a stipend for like home office kind of things, a small stipend per month. That's kind of sad because I've seen some really cool companies have some really cool benefits about like providing X dollars per month for, food and all of this. And I've never had that. So I would say maybe anything extra that comes outside of the typical health insurance, dental insurance.
I was going to say, some people say health insurance. So there you go.
I mean, that is definitely a huge plus in this world.
In this economy. No, just kidding. Last question for you, Meagan. In office, hybrid, or remote?
Remote all the way.
She's all full send.
I mean, with the ability to meet up every so often with your team, I think it's really cool in a remote environment where you can meet people from literally all over and make those connections that you wouldn't have otherwise. I think the working in office all the time is it's way too structured for me and it's way too much together time. So you still have that space working remote, but if you can see everybody from time to time, hybrid, still not a real big hybrid person either because you have to go into an office.
Still got to get in the car, still got to put on the hair and the makeup.
Putting on, normal real life clothes and making yourself look somewhat presentable rather than just like taking a shower and having your wet hair and putting on a t-shirt and, loose pants.
Right.
Amen.
Just getting the work done. Well, Meagan, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. I feel like this has been a long time coming, like I said. So if anyone is out there and wants to connect with Meagan, we'll include all the places that you can find her. And maybe we'll dig up that article from Cosmo and a few others. But thank you again, Meagan. It's been so much fun.
Thank you both so much. It was really great. And I just thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, enjoy your Monday. And remember, at the end of the day, it's literally just a job. See ya.